This is E370, lecture 16. We can start with the second question on the in the tutorial sheet given to you. So the question is actually very straightforward. You had a flip-flop which I called as D flip-flop A. This had certain setup time, hold time constraints and clock to queue propagation delay and clock to queue contamination delay associated with this flip-flop. Okay. Now we have taken this flop and we have added a buffer 1, buffer 1, 2 and 3 such that now the delay, there is some delay between the D of this whole block and the clock of this whole block. You know all the properties associated with this internal flop, but now you have to calculate the setup, hold and the propagation delays, the clock to queue delays of this whole contraption. So we will start with the calculation of the clock to queue delays. Can you quickly tell me what would be the clock to queue propagation delay of the new circuit?
PCQ plus T plus T3.
PCQ plus?
T buff 2 plus T buff 3.
So we are talking about the delay after which your Q will settle once a clock edge arrives. Right? So there is a delay of T buff 2 from here to here. Then there is a clock to Q delay from here to here. And then there is a T buff 3 delay from here to here. Right? So this will simply be delay of the buffer 2 plus the clock to Q propagation delay of the internal flop plus delay of the buffer 3. Now for these buffers, if I had given the contamination delay and the propagation delay separately, which one would you use here?
Propagation.
It has to be the propagation delay because you are estimating the worst case delay from this clock edge to the Q settling. Okay. So similarly, TCCQ dash will be equal to T buff 2 plus TCCQ plus T buff 3. Right? So anytime you get a result, it is a good thing to check if your result is actually sane. Meaning, look for sanity checks that you can run on this result. Right? So what is a quick sanity check that you can run on this? In this particular case, the result is very, very straightforward, but I want you to get in this habit of deriving a result and then immediately doing a sanity check on it. Right? So in this case, an immediate sanity check would be to consider that there is no buffer 2 or buffer 3. Right? If there is no buffer 2 or buffer 3, effectively your clock to queue delay is simply the clock to queue delay of this flop. Right? And in your equations, without buffer 3 and buffer 2, these values will go to 0. So your result simplifies as same TPCQ and TCCQ of this flop. So anytime you derive something, immediately see what sort of sanity checks you can do on that derivation. Okay, so now let us look at some more interesting parts of this problem. So we have to calculate the setup time for this new flop. So how would you do that?
T plus T buff minus T2. So T buff 1 minus T buff 2.
So we'll take it one step at a time. Right? So for the original flop, if this was my clock, your setup time is some time before this clock edge. Now let's say I have added a buffer in this path which has a delay of T buff 2 and I call this node as clock dash. So now what you have is a clock dash. Let's say your clock dash looks like this. Then how will your clock signal look like? Your clock signal is clock dash divided by T buff 2. Right? Now your setup constraint is before this clock edge, your data had to be stable for some TSU. Right? But now, as far as this flop is concerned, your clock pin is this, right? Which means we need to define our setup constraint with respect to this edge, right? So that will be the small portion here. And what would this value be? So look at this and tell me, what is this value?
TSU minus T buff 2.
That will simply be TSU minus T buff 2. Okay. Now let's say I add one more buffer in the data path and I call this as D dash, and this has a delay of T buff 1. Right? So you want the D pin to be stable at this point. Right? But because there is now a buffer delay from D dash to D buff, that means that your D dash should be stable at this point. And this becomes our new setup time. And this value would be so whatever was the value we calculated earlier, so that is T setup minus T buff 2. What else? Plus T buff 1. So you get your result as TSU dash equal to TSU minus T buff 2 plus T buff 1. What is the sanity check you can do? Right? You can consider what happens if T buff 1 and T buff 2 are both equal to 0. Then your result should simplify down to the setup time of the original internal clock. Right? And you will get that result here. Now another sanity check that you could have done was to consider one delay at a time and then see if the results match. But in this particular case, we derived the final result by considering one delay at a time. Is that clear? Can you quickly tell me what is the hold time for the new circuit? So how many of you have solved this already? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, good. So we follow the same principle. If you apply a clock dash that looks like this, your clock is going to be a delayed version of that, and this delay is by some T buff 2. And your hold constraint is with respect to this clock edge. And now you have to convert this constraint in terms of some time delay after this clock edge. So if I consider only the delay in the clock path, this will simply be equal to T buff 2 plus T hold. Now if your data has to remain stable till this point, that means your D is stable till this point. That means your D dash could have changed sometime before. Right? So D dash has to remain till this point. Right? And the delay between these two will be the delay in the data path, right? In the path of the D signal. So finally, you will get your new hold time to be equal to whatever is your T hold plus T buff 2 minus T buff 1. Okay. Again, the sanity check, very first thing you can do is to assume that both the buffers have 0 delay. Any questions on this? Okay. So then we move on to the second part of the question, where you are given that you have this big combinational circuit and this is between two flops. We called it as some FF1 and FF2. Now we are not concerned with these flops. We are concerned with the flops that we are going to introduce when we break this big combinational circuit into multiple smaller combinational circuits using pipelining. Okay? So what it means is you will have your FF1. It will go to a small combinational circuit followed by one of the flops we will insert. The next, you break down this big combinational circuit into multiple smaller modules and you will have this sort of an implementation. And your question is, if you could choose between the D flip-flop A or the D flip-flop B for implementing these flops, which one would you pick? Right? How would you go about answering this question?
Minimizing the throughput time. We'll try to minimize the
We want to minimize the throughput time, right? So let's assume that the number of stages are fixed, right? So now minimizing the throughput time simply boils down to minimizing the clock period. So we have to choose a flip-flop that will allow us to minimize the clock period, right? So it basically means we have to look at the paths in which we need to do timing analysis that are directly correlated with determining the clock period, right? So basically we have to do we check a setup time check or a hold time check? We do a setup time check, right? So let us take a sample scenario and let's assume that we are analyzing the path that is shown here. So you get launched from here and it is captured from here. How would the timing look like?
PCQ plus
So this will be equal to T PCQ
PCL
plus the combinational logic delay
plus TSU.
plus TSU, right? And we want to minimize this quantity, of which this combinational logic delay is right now not under our control. It is what it is, right? So when we are minimizing it, we want to minimize this clock to queue propagation delay and the setup time delay. In particular, we want to minimize their summation. So this can be written as TCI plus TPCQ plus TSU. Now this part is called as the sequencing overhead. So anytime you are doing pipelining, where you take a big combinational circuit, break it down by inserting additional flops, with every new path that you create, you will have to, the clock period will have to be greater than this. Right? There is some combinational delay, plus there is the sequencing overhead that you need to do. Right? What it means is, you could theoretically bring down your TCI to be very, very small values, but eventually you will be limited by the sequencing overhead. Okay. So now in this particular problem, we simply have to look at which of the two flops has a higher sum for TPCQ plus TSU, right? And we have to pick the one with the lower sum, the lower sequencing overhead. So can you quickly tell me what is the TPCQ plus TSU for both the flops?
2.75.
For flop A, you will get it as 2 nanoseconds. And for flop B, you get it as 2.75 nanoseconds. So which one would you pick? So this is a better choice. Any questions on this? All right. Now, have you heard of this binary coded decimal BCD before? You're hearing it for the first time, right? Okay, then let me quickly explain what it means. Any binary number you take, so some number which is represented to the base of 2, this can be converted into a decimal number to the base of 10 in decimal system, right? Now, let's say this number is a 2-digit number, let's say 3 and 1. Now, when we represent this in BCD convention, what it means is we will represent this 1 in its binary form, we will represent this 3 in its binary form. So now the question is, So if I have 2 digits, I have to represent each digit in its binary form. Now to represent a digit in its binary form, how many bits do I need?
4.
It's 4. Is that clear to everyone? So how it comes about is, this value, one digit can take anywhere between 0 to 9. The maximum value it can take is 9. And to represent 9, you need 4 bits. Right? So you will have 4 bits to represent the LSB digit and another 4 bits to represent this 3. So in this particular case, the answer is 0001 and 0011. That's it. So you have been asked to implement a binary coded decimal encoder, meaning given a binary number, you have to give the output as its BCD version using a ROM. So you first do a truth table and then figure out how to, what sort of contents you want to store in the read-only memory such that you'll get that end result.